So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to begin by actually saying a few words of introduction, not about our upcoming keynote speaker, but actually about our upcoming chairperson, a member of the board of the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy, a longtime friend and partner, Professor Dr. Ulrich Bruckner. Professor Bruckner is the Jean Monnet Chair Professor for European Studies at Stanford University, and in his free time, so to speak, he is also serving as part of the leadership of the Institute, and also helping us, in particular, with the Academy for Cultural Diplomacy, as most of you know, where we offer the only BA, MA, PhD programs in the world in the field of cultural diplomacy. And Professor Bruckner has been very helpful for us in the creation, not only of the more academic components, but also in terms of the theoretical and research components. So Professor Bruckner, thank you again so much for coming here today and helping us to chair this session. I will now give the microphone to you, and perhaps you could even say a few words of introduction on the main podium for our upcoming keynote speaker. So a brief warm of applause, first of all, for Professor Dr. Ulrich Bruckner.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As Mark kindly introduced me, I don't have to say anything about me in person. Is the microphone working? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, great. As Mark said, I'm a Jean Monnet Professor for European Studies, and I came today with an international group from the Freie Universität International Summer University. But I'm also here to work with students of cultural diplomacy, which, if we would quote Karl Marx, which we don't do that often here, is not only enough to explain the world, but to change it. That's why in the other capacity of the ICD, when we do not only work academic studies and try to see how international relations work, or in this particular format of the conference, the dialogue with the Arab world work, it's important to also develop strategies and to discuss policy proposals. On that background, it's my great pleasure and honor to welcome Dr. Philipp Lengsfeld, who's a member of parliament since 2013. And he's born in the GDR, and already as a pupil in school confronted with the conditions of what it means to live in an autocratic regime, which I probably think left already a deep impression at that time what it means to be a political person. And after studying natural science, he's a trained medical physician. He joined the Bundestag in 2013, and since then works in a number of capacities. So please join me for a warm welcome for Dr. Philipp Lengsfeld.
So, hello everybody, and my nicely arranged presentation has been touched, but not completely disassembled. So, you already heard my name, Philipp Lengsfeld, member of the German Bundestag. I have given myself the title of Cultural and Political Challenges in Germany in the wake of the migration crisis. That's a huge title, so I actually brought it down to a few thoughts, and I think they will stimulate some discussion. The first thing is about the whole current situation in Germany, like in a focus lens, and the other things are challenges we have with integration and the Muslim communities. So I guess all of this will be of quite some interest to you. You heard most of these, so I start with a disclaimer and compliance statement. I'm from the conservative part of the Bundestag, CDU, CSU. We actually won the election, as you know. Chancellor Merkel is from my fraction. I was newly elected in 2013, but I've been very active in local politics for some time before that. My constituency is actually here, the center of Berlin. And before that, I worked 10 years in the pharmaceutical industry, and I am holding a PhD in physics. But I worked very much in medical physics during my time in industry. And this is an invited, reimbursed talk, just for transparencies, and views expressed are my own personal political analysis. Okay, let's start off with these challenges. And one of the challenges I thought is quite interesting for you under the topic of cultural diplomacy is how do we actually call the people, the persons coming in the current crisis to Germany? And that may sound like a very trivial question, but it is absolutely not. So basically, the German society and the mainstream media are currently calling almost everybody Flüchtlinge, refugees. But if you look a little bit at the background of the current situation in Germany, you will see and understand that our migration is actually mainly driven by our very liberal asylum laws and the way we currently interpret them. And before the current situation or crisis, we actually had a very similar situation in the 90s where the influx of people seeking asylum in Germany steadily increased to very high numbers. And at that time, the whole debate was around Asylbewerber, Asylsuchende, so asylum seekers, asylum Bewerber is actually apply for asylum, or if you put it more negatively, Asylanten. And it was actually the same situation, but years later, we are now not talking about asylum anymore, we're calling them refugees, Flüchtlinge. Or, if you're very politically correct, you say Geflüchtete, because some people said that even Flüchtlinge sounds too negative. It's actually a very positively connotated word in German because it really describes people in need of help, fleeing from terror, fleeing from maybe hunger or some other situation. However, and that is a problem, and I put those numbers right down here. Even under the most liberal interpretation of our asylum laws, only about 50% of the people coming actually get the status of a refugee or of somebody granted asylum in this country, which means that the other half doesn't get it. Now I think the numbers are a little bit changing. The 50% is maybe from the height of the situation end of summer last year. Maybe the numbers are now a little bit better, although I'm not 100% sure. But still, you have a sizable portion of the people actually arriving in this country who are never ever granted the status of refugee and probably aren't refugees at all. And that is, of course, a huge problem. And I show you this slide because this is actually a photo of a current law we have just passed in the German Bundestag. Law of Integrationsgesetz. And the German laws are always this nicely prepared with stating A, problem and target, problem and aim, and then solution and so forth, alternatives. And under A, you find this sentence, this was actually passed into law in the German Bundestag, and I translate that for you, Flüchtlinge ohne Perspektive auf Anerkennung als Flüchtlinge, which means refugees without the perspective of being granted the status of being a refugee, which is, of course, crazy. I mean, at least I think it is crazy, although I also voted for that bill, but in that case I can say I'm being only one of the 580 who supported, who actually drafted that bill. I have only a very small burden to share. But this is the essence of the current problem. We are having people which we are calling refugees because they passed over the Balkan or the Italian Mediterranean route into Germany, but they are not refugees and they are not being granted the status of being accepted asylum seekers, and that creates, of course, a lot of problems. We have to repatriate them. This is a very complicated process, politically very charged, often impossible, technically impossible, with several countries simply refuse to take back the people. Some have destroyed their passport. You have problems identifying them. You have lots of activists, lawyers and others supporting people to stay in the country, to obstruct the Abschiebung. And you have several conflicts within the migration groups, because there are the status A people, the true refugees, and there are others who know that they never have any prospect of actually getting a legal position in Germany. And this creates tensions within, for instance, these large shelter communities, especially in Berlin. We have places where there are 1,000, 2,000 people living together. And then you have like the Syrians versus others, you have Muslims versus Christians, and so forth. So this creates a lot of challenges. So this is like the appetizer, although I realize I already took some time dwelling on this problem, but I think it's a key problem. Moving on now to problems of integration, viewed through the question of cultural diplomacy. Because this is really now straight out of the discussion in Germany, in my constituency in Berlin, but also in the whole country, because obviously a large portion of the people now coming into the country have Muslim background, and of course a large number of migrants which are already in the country, especially from Turkey. Also the Kurds and others, they are also having a Muslim background. So the next three things are about cultural challenges, Islam and the German society. And I start with this very charged topic of headscarf, for instance, for female teachers. So, some Bundesländer, like Berlin, the Bundesland where we are currently, have something which is called Neutralitätsgesetz, neutrality law, which prohibits actually headscarves or other religious symbols in public offices, schools, etc. But this is being legally challenged as we speak, and a number of court decisions have actually ruled that that this law may not be in compliance with the German constitution, but this is an ongoing process. But to give you an idea of the ongoing political discussions, and we are learning a lot about details of the Islamic culture as we go along. I didn't know all these various types of headscarves before. So the first three, we have a discussion on whether that should be allowed for schools, police, justice, and public offices. And for the more radical version of the niqab and the burqa, we have a discussion in Germany of a total ban in public. And as I told you, I'm presenting my political analysis, my views on the topic here. So I could, although I have to say it's very controversial in my own party, I personally could accept headscarves in offices and schools. However, I've heard the argument that this puts considerable pressure on liberal, young Muslim women who don't want to wear a headscarf in school or university. So they are getting under pressure from their family or from their friends or from whomever if there are female teachers with headscarves. So this is, of course, a very important, a very heavy counter-argument. So one has to discuss that. Niqab and burqa, I have a very clear opinion on this one. I think they have no place in a free, open society. That is my view, but this is also a strong view in my party. Legally, of course, it's a different topic. So as we are a free country, it's rather difficult to actually implement such a ban, but on a political society base, for me, that is no question. Second topic on Islam and German society, I picked Ramadan and school. Because I have some had some personal stories out of my constituency and out of Berlin, but I also recently looked into that in more in depth because Ramadan was in school time just a few weeks ago. So I looked into the details of the current discussions. Because, of course, priority in Germany and in Europe is that during school time, a pupil should learn, and the priority during school time is not religion. Now, we have an official position on this from the Islamrat. The situation in Germany is that we don't really have strong Muslim structures, but we have some, and the Islamrat is one of them. And I put this position paper up for you. This is on Ramadan and pupils fasting during school time from the Islamrat. And the key sentence for me is this one, that the Islamrat says that the question of whether a pupil should fast or not is a decision between the individual child and Allah. Parents or school have no right to interfere. And they actually give no clear age limit. They say you have to be mature enough to fast. And as you all know, a strict interpretation means no drink, no eating the whole day. And a school day in Berlin can be quite long, from 9 to 4 in the afternoon. I think this is a very problematic position of the Islamrat, because obviously the mission, I call it mission, mandate, or duty of schools is the well-being of the pupils and the best education every day. And not partially, but wholly. So my personal view, again, I think we should be very strict on the age question. In Germany, you have a mature age for religion. I don't have a better translation for it, which is 14. I think below 14, there should be no discussion about religion, because the children are just too young. So no fasting below the age of 14. And also for those who are older than 14, so mature to take their own religious views, I think we should be rather strict on allowing them not to drink or not to have the adequate energy during a school day. So I would say drinking and necessary energy intake should be mandatory, should be a given. And above 18, of course, everybody is free to do what he pleases, can leave school, can do what he or she wants. So fasting is okay, cannot be prohibited, but should be compatible with your duties in school, which should still be priority number one, I think. Last question, also very heated debate in Germany, question of handshaking. There was a huge controversy. I'm not sure whether you've seen it in Switzerland. And in Germany, we had cases of pupils refusing to shake hands with their female teachers. And we had a case in Berlin, out of Pankow, actually. I lived there quite a long time, so I know the school also a bit. It's a private school, actually very posh, expensive school. There was a father imam out of Iran coming with his son to a specially arranged meeting with a female teacher because the son had some troubles in school, and the imam doesn't speak German, but the first thing he says, I cannot shake your hand because of religious reasons. The female teacher, also being relatively aggressive, I would say, cancels the meeting, and there's a huge fallout. There is a legal case going on. Things went all over the papers. The school actually issued a statement saying that they apologize if there have been misunderstandings, but the father and the son left the school, so a huge fallout. Strong resonance of this case and similar cases in the German society and the German media. Now, again, my analysis, this is a huge topic because of Gleichberechtigung, equal rights. We are actually pushing women to take responsible positions, not only in school, not only in university, but also in the police force or in hospitals or wherever. I mean, we are ruled by a chancellor, by a female chancellor. So this is a huge topic. And for me, it is clear that the core task in schools, on the street, in hospitals, in parliament, wherever you have female workers, should be the respective tasks, the respective roles, and not whether you are being treated or governed or taught or whatever taught by a man or a woman. And of course, handshake is a very deep-rooted custom in Germany. So my personal view again is actually it's more or less mandatory for me, the handshake. And if there's really a situation like very religious monks, imams, but only in special cases, I would say, that they can't shake hands with females, then they have to do it indiscriminately and don't shake any hands, be it male or female. You should not allow anybody, especially not parents or patients for that matter in hospitals, to say, I don't want to be treated or I want to discriminate between a female and a male person, although I'm actually in life danger, or my house is burning, or my son needs good education. So this is my view on the handshake issue. And with that, I thank you for your attention. And I think we still have some time for a few questions. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Lengsfeld. Most of us do not come from Germany, and the reason why people come to Germany, either to conferences or to study in the format of an international summer university, should also give the chance to hear what people in this country think. And I guess this is a very good example of getting to know a specific German mindset, which in a country which is very much committed to freedom is the freedom of the other, is certainly not the only one and an exclusive one. I personally have already a few questions, but since I was invited to be the moderator, I don't want to go too far to start a discussion here. But I think in the morning what we did in class, to think of reality as a socially constructed play with words, we can also learn a lot from a presentation like this, that the way we put the current situation as problematic, that the number of people or the status of people, or whether a habit or a tradition or a culture clashes with a culture of a titular nation, turns some things in a way in the terminology of a problem, no matter if we are used or not used to this when we compare it with something else. So if we would take people to a beer festival in my home region in Bavaria, and they would observe the local tradition and how people interact in a beer festival, or the use of alcohol as an integral part of their culture, one could use the same external observer position and ask to what extent such a cultural habit clashes with the titular nation, or whether it's healthy or something, as if we go to the zoo and observe the culture of others and see whether what they do clashes with what we think is the guiding culture. And I think from the perspective of this, we are right anyway, or we define what we stand for, and everything else is a deviation from the norm. So it all boils down to the question of whether religious norms are superior over the legal system, and to what kind of legal systems, is a difficult approach for cultural diplomacy, because that turns into something like a hardliner position. This is us, and they are the other, and the other have to adapt if they want to successfully integrate, which is the background of the story. But as I said, this is just my comment to get started. I'm sure there are a lot of questions from your perspective, both from the participants of the conference or our guests from FUBIS, the Freie Universität International Summer University. So who's brave enough to ask for the microphone for a question or a comment for Dr. Lengsfeld. Yes, please. Can
And
we have a
as always,
microphone?
please briefly introduce yourself too, so that we know where you're from.
Thank you for the presentation. My name is Hassan Diab. I'm a former minister from Lebanon. This conference is about cultural diplomacy in the Arab region, about Arabs in Europe, and so on. Of course, immigrants to, or refugees, or whatever you want to call them, into the region, into Lebanon, the region in the Middle East, as well as Europe, are not only Muslims. There are all sects, all religions, and of course the majority are Muslims. But I'm surprised that we are concentrating on small aspects, of Islam, the handshaking. These are very minor issues, and we're just talking now, you were talking as well about the rights of women to be able to, dress the way they want, to be able to live the way they want without infringing on any laws, of course. So I think this goes beyond these, in my mind, very minor issues into more major issues of integration of ideologies and the whole culture of Islam with, the German society and the European society in general. Whether a woman, my wife doesn't wear a veil, but whether a woman wears a veil or not, to me, this is her right. Other religions similarly do. But I think the major issues go beyond these, what to me I regard as minor, whether you handshake or not, or whether this is personal freedom as far as I'm concerned. I think it's a bit too much to put a law against something like that, although I'm for handshaking, I'm not against it. But I wouldn't force somebody to handshake if they don't want to. I would have liked to see the more major issues being discussed of integration and how cultural diplomacy affect the 1.5 million or so Syrians in Germany. Thank you.
Shall we collect a few, or do you want to respond directly?
I can respond to it because it's a key issue. I've been invited and I presented what I regard as important. And I can tell you, I wouldn't have presented the 3 issues if I would have regarded them as being very small issues. I think they are maybe not the greatest issues in the world. Okay, that may be the case. But I think they are quite important because we have to agree on a certain way how we deal with these problems. And if I take the middle one, the fasting during school time, I think this has tremendous implications actually on success in school, on the way you interact, also on the way you respect your respective cultures. So I wouldn't take that too lightly. Because everything which revolves around education, and I think education is also a key theme here for this conference, is of fundamental value. And so this brings me to the second thing, which is the headscarf in schools, for instance. It's a very heated discussion in Germany, I can tell you. It's not a minor issue. And I think I have presented some balanced views, but I can tell you that we have very strong views on both sides of the spectrum. One saying it has to be allowed, others saying this would be like the end. How does Pegida call themselves? The end of the Occident, or what is Untergang des Abendlandes. So this is a very it is a symbolic issue, yes, but it's symbolically charged, and that's why it is actually of key importance. And the handshake thing, I think, is touching on a very fundamental theme. And I have very strong views on that. And that is, you have to respect, that is regardless of where you are from. That applies to Germans, German with Turkish origin, with Kurdish, with what have you, Lebanese, foreigners, all the rest of it. You have to respect our physicians, you have to respect our police force, and you have to respect our teachers. And that irrespectively on which gender they are. And this is a very fundamental question. And of course you can say, oh, I only greet by putting my hand on my heart. but if it's in fact actually challenging the authority, or if then somebody comes and says, no, I don't want to have a female doctor, even though I'm dying, I need to have a male doctor, that is really bringing this thing to a very, to a question of life and death. So I would say these are not the biggest issues in the world, but they are important and they need to be thoroughly discussed, and solutions need to be found, because these are political and legal and organizational challenges in Germany and Europe as we speak.
The gentleman in the gray T-shirt is next.
Hello, I'm Jesse. Thank you first very much for your speech. It was very, very interesting. Presentation was very interesting. So some of the views that you expressed seemed to kind of, at least for me, it seemed as though it was going somewhat against the idea of Freiheit, right? So freedom, like freedom to wear what you want, freedom to have certain religious views, and freedom to follow through with them. So how do you kind of deal with this juxtaposition of the German idea of Freiheit and these views?
You can hand it back to the lady behind you.
Hi, my name's Naomi and I'm a master's student here at the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy. I also work with an organization called Singer that creates a community where locals and newcomers can come together on an even playing field to meet and co-create projects. So what I wanted to ask was, in your presentation you talked a lot about the changes that, or the challenges that would lead to changes that need to be made on behalf of the refugees. But do you think there's anything that German civil society needs to be doing, and the German government as well? Thank you.
And maybe we can take a third one from the gentleman in the back.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency, for a very interesting speech. My name is Faisal. I'm a journalist. I'm from Dubai. I think you touched on a very sensitive topic, and you are literally under the spotlight now. Just to follow up on my colleague Hassan, I think what he was trying to say is those people who believe that, you know, a woman shouldn't shake hands or a woman should be wearing a burqa represent, perhaps, I don't have any figures, but they don't represent the majority of Muslims, particularly in a city like Dubai, where, I live at the moment. We don't even talk about these issues because they don't exist. So my question is, how much of a problem it is? I'm not disagreeing with you that these issues must be tackled, because obviously, as you pointed out, they create some sort of an obstacle. But how much of an issue amongst the immigrants here do they form? And the other question is, how much buy-in do you have from the Muslim community? And I am in no way saying that that would be an easy topic. Essentially, if there is an agreement amongst Muslims, you wouldn't be having to do this in government. The problem, I think, and I speak as a Muslim, the problem is with Islam is, there was a very famous book that came out a few years ago, is Who Speaks for Islam? There is nobody that actually speaks for Islam, given, we cannot even agree if Ramadan, ends on this day or another day. One country seems to see the moon, the other country doesn't seem to see the moon at the same time, although it's the same moon. So I'm in no way saying there is no issue with kind of a modern approach to Islam. But I think your task would be much easier if you have a buy-in of some sort of a Muslim community inside the country.
Yeah, thank you. Very important and fundamental questions. I'm just thinking which order I should take. Of course, freedom and law and order, that is a constant discussion. I mean, how much freedom can you grant? How much do you loosen? That would be another discussion, not the integration religion bit on security. We are discussing this every day in Germany now. It's a video observation, police laws, and so forth. Of course, this is limiting freedom to some degree. But on the other hand, if you don't have security, then what is your freedom worth? So this is not the perfect answer to your question, but I understand. I totally agree that this is a challenge, and I pointed out that on the headscarf in schools, for instance, I I'm more on the liberal side, but I also understand the arguments put in front of me by the more restrictive view on this. And I think it's always good to look at your peers. So there's the French way and there's the British way. I think they are very different in their approaches, and I tend to look more on the British side. I think the French are too strict in not allowing certain cultures to flourish, and the way they have a sort of badly integrated society. I'm not an expert in French internal politics, but I think it's fairly obvious that they didn't do a perfect job on integrating their minorities. So that is certainly not the example to follow. But on the other hand, if you look at the British society, it is also not going. It's not. There are also issues there. So this is also not the perfect blue pause for German politics. So we have to maybe find our own approaches to tackle this problem. And that leads me directly to the question of, should German society also change? Of course. I mean, any democratic society should be in a constant mode of changing and improving, because that is the very nature of a free democratic society, also driven by competition to improve, and that is also on a cultural level. And it's not only competition; it's also enriching lives. So I'm a strong believer in this idea of diversity. And I mean, this is Berlin. If you look at Berlin's success story, this is because we are such an open and diverse and interesting and a lively city. And this means changes. Sometimes this is tiring. I've discussions also almost every day. Sometimes people would like to have things kept the way they have seen it on the first day they arrived in the city. I'm a born Berliner, so I know that this city is changing every day, but a lot of people sometimes have this dream that things just stay the same way than when they first saw it, because they liked it so much. But obviously this is not the solution. Things are changing, and diversity is good, but it is also has also some downsides if you have poorly integrated, segregated communities. This can create a lot of issues, and we've seen it in other places, but we also see it in Berlin. So yes, we have to change, and I think we are doing it. I think we are learning a lot about various nations. A lot of people will not say never heard about before, but never knew the details about. So this is going on. And the third question was now...
Gesellschaftliche Selbststeuerung, gesellschaftliche Selbststeuerung von muslimischen Gruppen.
Yeah. The interaction with the Muslim community. Yes, I'm not a fan of pauschalisierung, of generalization, because I know you know it much better, and you just said it yourself that Islam is very, very diverse. I mean, Christianity is also diverse, but we have much more stringency in the Catholic faith, as I can see that, compared to the situation with Islam. So we have to differentiate. We have to look at the individual communities. And yes, I want to work more closely with them, but guess what? This is only just beginning. I think for some time there was virtually no structure at all. Things are now improving a little bit, but we have to jointly go a much longer way before we have well-organized individual communities. I think the Islamists are doing currently probably the best job of organizing themselves, and that's something we have to fight, of course. But a lot of the other communities are pretty badly organized, as I see it. So this needs to improve, and maybe they should also mature into being independent of their original countries. You need the national identity, that is obvious for me, But if you take the Turkish community, for instance, they are very much influenced by the current Turkish government, and that is obviously also not a good position. So we have a strong discussion currently about the changes in Turkey and the way the Turkish community in Germany is influenced by President Erdogan in a certain direction, which increases tensions within the Turkish communities, because we also have Kurds and Aleviten and others, and they are openly hostile to each other currently in Germany, and so this is a problematic situation. So yes, we should work closely with them. I want to do that, but it's easier said than done, because the structures are not very stable and not very deep-rooted. That is at least my impression.
I think we have time for a final round. There are two ladies in the back. Ingo wants to ask something, and maybe we put all these together.
Okay, ladies in the back, ladies first. Okay.
Hello, thank you very much for your presentation, and I think it represents a really hot topics in the German society. And I think it's very healthy to have such a discussions at this moment. But what I'm afraid of after seeing this presentation is jumping to conclusions, applying laws on a top-down policies that doesn't represent democratic values of the country. And what I might maybe suggest, especially because I work a lot in the cultural conflict, the cultural nature of the Syrian conflict, and trying to look at identities and try to see how culture can be interpreted, understood or misunderstood, is really to open a dialogue, is to really create a platform where Germans and newcomers can come and discuss, because there's a lot of misperceptions here, like the way the shake hand in Germany, it means respect, while in the culture of some Muslims, putting the hand on the heart, it represents also respect to the women. So the concept of respect is agreed by the Germans and by the newcomers. It only has a different representation in the body language. And I think if such a discussion, such an open discussion happens in a very nice platform, they might be agreeing and accepting the concept of shaking hands most probably more than a law that tells them you are forced to shake hands, because after all, Germany is a country full of values, full of culture, and I think if we deal with it in this way rather than a club that has rules, if you follow the rules, then you are accepted. If you are very much looking like the German in the way you are acting, and I think this assimilation will happen later on, because when people interact, they will find a lot of common ground to interact amongst. But if they have these barriers from the very beginning with very clear-cut rules, I think this will really make this integration even slower and difficult. I mean, that was my...
You forgot to introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Yara Mualla. I'm a PhD student here at the ICD in collaboration with West of Scotland, and I'm from Syria.
Yeah, thank you. I am Fifalina. I am a lawyer from Madagascar. And what I just wanted to point out is the creation. It's just what I noticed, because it's my first week in Germany, and I noticed is that the migrants, I could see migrants in the roads and so on, and I noticed a creation of a new culture. It is a culture of pagan. What I would like to point out is that even if Germany is helping migrants, they are giving stipends and so on. But what I noticed is that those people, they should not use their children to beg. This can provoke hatred from the other people, and also we should control this everyone, even migrants, should be productive too. They should have will to be regularized, to have a regularized situation. So I don't know if maybe there is already a solution about this, but I think it's a very, very bad influence, and it has been created. It has not, this kind of behavior is not innate. So that's it, thank you.
Hi, my name is Rafi. I'm from Afghanistan. I don't have comments on what you have presented, but
You get closer to the microphone. Just closer.
I have only some comments what he have said. As a Afghan, I'm not refugee, of course. I've just come here to have this conference. We understand, like we all understand, that it's your home, and you're the one who decide what should be have done, what is allowed in your home, and what is not allowed in your home. Most of people coming as a refugee to EU, it's not because to have money and to have, but the main point is that there we know that European Union people, they respect human rights more than any other country. So that's why we are coming, like people are coming here. So it's up to your generosity if you are only providing him a food and a place to live, or you providing him a good platform to live and practice what he believes in.
Yeah.
I know you have limited time. Should we bring the microphone back to you, or
I
you have
would
to tell
love
us?
to include Ingo as a final question.
Okay, final question.
Very kind. Very kind of you. Thank you very much. My name is Ingo Peters from Freie Universität Berlin, and I'm also teaching at the Saba University currently. And sometimes, you know, you said you are a member of the Christian Democratic Party, and that reminded me of the general problem that we still face in Germany and maybe all over Western Europe. That I ask myself, you know, on the one hand, we claim that we are secularized societies, states, at least as long as you are talking about what you call the public, the law that are governing our social life. But of course, we have to admit that there are also other laws or other regulations which relate to religion. But I'm definitely not going to tell you of which church I'm a member, but because I think it shouldn't matter. You know, I'm a member of a church, but it's my private thing and not a public thing. And so I also ask everybody what he or she thinks about the borderline between the public sphere and the religious spheres. You know, I have nothing against any kind of religion, and I always argue in favor of tolerance, as long as nobody wants to tell me what I have to do because of religion. Yeah, other people's religion or my own religion. Yeah, that's my decision. That's his or her decision. That's a private game. But as soon as I'm told what I have to do because the other is a Jew or a Muslim or a Christ or whatsoever, a Christian of whatever kind, I become allergic, I must say. So this is also where the trouble really starts, I guess, where religion is not an answer to the problems we are facing in our human life, but where religion is part of the problem. And this is also something we should discuss. I don't like Christian states. I don't like Islamic states. I don't like any kind of religious states, but secular states. And this is, of course, the trouble we are in Western society still, and in others so-called non-Western societies even more so still today. So this is, in a way, the question of what's public, what's private, and where does a religious part come in?
Thank you, Ingo. And the final word goes to Dr. Lengsfeld.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I take the last comment, I guess it was more first. I think we are in a sort of agreement. I also think that religion is a private thing. I'm a member of the so-called Christian Democratic Party. Yes, you pointed it out correctly, but I put on the slide conservative for a good reason, actually, because I'm not one of the CDU members who's now currently saying, "Oh, my Christian worldview drives me to do this and that." Because I agree with you, it's in the end it's private, but we are faced with the challenges, and I presented 3 topics to you, and all of them are in the public space, in schools, more or less, but also, as I told you, hospitals and the police. And I think this is a challenge of an open, tolerant society. Same challenge as in my party. We want to attract people from the Muslim community, for instance, but there is this threshold or this reluctance because we are called Christians by some of them, not by all, but it is very noticeable that they were much easier in approaching the SPD or the Green Party, although most of them, or a considerable portion of them, are much more conservative than those left-wing parties, at least from my point of view. We have done not such a great job until now, but we are working in that direction. But the name is, of course, a little bit of a challenge there. But if you look into our program and into our set of rules, we are not defining ourselves as a religious party. We are defining ourselves as a modern democratic party, which involves Christian, other faiths, and also people who have who are not religious. The first question, I would fully agree. I think I'm not proposing new laws. Actually, I'm very reluctant. But I'm a fan of clear rules. Rules in schools, rules in hospitals, rules vis-à-vis the police, and those probably need to be put into law, I guess, to make them more forceful. But in general, we should try to find solutions without applying the force of law. I would certainly agree, but we have to have this discussion. And if in the end we need a law because otherwise people will not follow it, then this is like the ultima ratio in such a discussion. The second question, as I understood it, points to a very general problem, and I think this is also intermingled with the third question comment. We have a strong bias in our current migration into Germany. It is too much relying on this asylum refugee thing, and much less on opening paths for legal migration into Germany because people want to live here. Because this is obviously something not completely different, but a different aspect. We are currently mainly letting people in via the asylum refugee option, and that's a bad thing, I think. It's important for those who really are in need of shelter, but as I told you, this is only a portion of the people who are actually coming, and it's certainly only a portion of those who want to come to Germany, as you rightly pointed out. And a lot of the issues you've correctly identified have a root cause in exactly this topic, because we are not letting people in based on how many houses we have and how much work we have, how much skills we need, and how much option we present to the migrants. But we are currently mainly giving them the right to live in Germany on the assumption, often correct, but not always, that they have no other option. And they need to be sheltered on humanitarian grounds. And this is a strong bias. This is a huge challenge we have. And there's a strong political discussion on how we solve this problem. One solution would be an immigration law. And I'm also tend to be in favor of this. But you also have to understand that with this open, very liberal asylum policy, this creates huge tension within the German society, because a lot of people would say, why would we allow even more people to come in when we are already so generous? And we can't even house and give work to those who are really in need. So this is a huge topic, but I think we have to address in earnesty because you see the issues with people not having proper work prospects, not having proper housing in Germany, and so forth. That is certainly not a situation which helps anybody. So yes, I fully agree that this is an issue, but it's not easily solved. So thank you, I would say. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
If we take students on excursions or if we set up intercultural communication conferences, it's not only about to give people a chance to have first-hand information, but to inspire them and to ask more questions than they actually take home as answers. I think in that respect you did an excellent job. There's a lot of food for thought that we can all work on, both in the conference as well as in the framework of our program. Before we continue with Dr. Mulak, I do not only want to thank you, but also apologize for stealing half of the group, because we have another appointment at the Chancellery and only stopped by because we didn't want to miss the opportunity to come here. Thank you very much for your presentation as well as your ability to answer the questions, and please join me for a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you again very much from my side as well, Dr. Lengsfeld. It was an honor to have you here.